Hello and welcome to a showcase video for a game of Future Start in Civ 3 multiplayer. Um, so over the last couple months, I have been playing a good amount of Future, preferentially pretty much. That's been the mod of choice for me. And um, I've actually somehow managed to achieve an insane win record recently, where there was like a 30 game stretch where, unless there was some reporting error, which is definitely possible, or um, I just miscounted. I don't know. I think over a 30 game stretch recently, I had a win percentage of 90%, which for Civ 3 is kind of insane. It's a very random game. Future Start, specifically, lots of people complain about how random the starts are and things like that, and how um, people say unbalanced it is. Um, but currently, to date, May 2024, I am the number one future player on the ladder, and my win percentage, like overall time, is only 60% or so, and so 90% is kind of crazy. But this is kind of an example of where, or you could say how, um, you can take a losing position or a position where you are definitely not favored and turn it around into a possibly winning one. And of course, in all those kind of positions, you do rely on your opponents to mess up here and there. But Future is a complicated enough game, and you'll see in this game, I feel like I played my lights out, and still, I will highlight a bunch of mistakes I made throughout it, probably. And so um, it's just a very complicated scenario. So there's lots of opportunity to mess up, and that means there's lots of opportunity if you're playing well to catch up. So yeah, we'll just hop in here. We're going to be playing this. There's a recording I did of the game, um, essentially like a screen capture. And so we'll be running that back at double speed, and I'll just kind of highlight some of the um, essential plays. So this is the start. You can kind of see the land, the capital, is insanely good, with 3 game tiles, and then of course the anarchy being 4 turn. That's pretty standard for a non-religious civ. Overall, pretty solid. 2 mountains, a hill, so plenty of late game production available. Lots of high food available. At the beginning, I was deliberating whether or not I wanted to walk and then chop a deer, or if I just wanted to plant in place. And the growth was the exact same timing wise early, but having both deer close early game I thought would be better. Instead of the alternative was to move southwest and get those 2 silks um, on border expand. But I thought having the 2 deer early was going to be more important, so I went with this. Um, so yeah, just kind of normal future setup stuff, telling your teammates where you are, planning out the early game moves, walking to get the chop, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, the you'll see here, as soon as Elk ends his turn, I do something interesting. I move my worker an extra tile, because with a 4 turn anarchy, it's going to take my worker, it takes him 4 turns to chop the forest, which, seeing as I already spent 1 turn walking him the first turn, means he wouldn't finish the chop before I get out of anarchy. And so he finishes the same time if I walk and then walk back and then chop. So I get a little bit more free exploration this way. Um, you can kind of see already that the surrounding land is not that great. We got plains up north with not a lot of hope, jungle to the south, and jungle to the west. And we're on some sort of skinny little stretch of land. So, not that promising. Um, and I sent my king south, or my queen south, because it was kind of a coin flip. I was along the C file, and so you really could send king north or south. It's not really clear which way would be better. And but there were hills and mountains south, so I thought I'd get more vision this way, but that turned up being a mistake because it wasted exploring time with the explorer later. But I really couldn't have known that. Here I go for the tax collector because um, essentially I would, if I didn't do this, I would get 2 food and then the chop would finish and I would end up wasting 2 food. And overflow doesn't give you anything in Civ, so you may as well just turn that extra 2 food into 4 um, commerce immediately. And the move actually only buys you back 2 commerce over what you would get because the river tile would be giving you 2 commerce anyway. But um, every little bit helps, and you never know where it will come in handy. So right here, Bergie says that he has already essentially made contact with Halu, which is not promising. It's only turn 4, as you can see, and Halu is, no slouch of a future player. So um, Boogie, who mostly plays Ancient Start, that's going to be a tough matchup for him. And you'll see it doesn't end up being so well. And it also doesn't help that, as we'll see later, Halu actually has a pretty amazing start. So yeah, you can see I kind of wasted some exploring time having to explore north, whereas if the king were up there, all that would have been explored already, and he could be heading home, which is essentially what it's going to be doing now. Um, Here I'm just trying to plan out where I'm going to move or where I would plant cities, but you can kind of see I really only have like 2 okayish spots that I've explored so far to plant. That between the rubber, horse, and fish kind of areas, one, and then to the east of the game that's not yet in my borders, that's kind of another one, and that's pretty much it. But I do already, I found that I have rubber and oil. The oil is going to be hard to get to, obviously, because I have these mountains and jungle in the way and all that, but at least both reds at this point seem safe. They're along the coast, which means they are susceptible to um, someone coming and boating them, but that also means that I might not have to actually road all the way there. I could just drop off a settler, and as a seafaring civ, my harbors are cheap, so I can make use of that trait. So, really hut deprived here, which honestly sucked. It was like to not have the early game gold, and not have um, any free exploration, and not even have a chance at a pop is terrible. So yeah, Boogie has already found Halu. He's found that Halu has oil. He now sees Bonehead's king, so you know, essentially he's cornered, and it's going to be a tough game for him. The early game build for me is pretty nice with this double game. Um, Not having another BG or anything like that is pretty tough, but it still kind of works out. And so here I could have gone. I was trying to decide. This is like a micro move that took me a while to figure out. I could have underrushed the galleon and picked up the granary this turn. But what I decided to do instead is to chop this game, because I'm going to want it chopped anyway. Let the granary finish in 2 turns, and then that will align nicely with the chop to give me the settler, which I will plant on the road that I will be making um, after chopping this game. So here I found Love's border, and I haven't seen a scout yet, so him being on the enemy team, I kind of want to avoid revealing where I am, and then me finding this hut kind of confirms that he hasn't explored in this direction yet. So that's big intel. It means I can kind of keep my whereabouts hidden a little bit longer, because he might believe that the land just ends to his west if he saw the water to the north and the water to the south. Um, so I try and keep that, try and, stop that from being obviously not true. And so here I kind of reveal myself to him but as if I came from a different direction. So, yeah, just trying to essentially, if he has some early game potential, just maybe he'll spend it in the wrong direction, is the idea. So, yeah, you can see this chop lines up nicely with the settler timing, and it um, considering I don't have any more production tiles really to use in my capital, it works out nicely to do it this way. Um, yeah, so this is disaster, by the way. This is exactly not what you want to see if you're playing against Loveburger. Um, Oil capital, lots of floodplains, the cow. Um, this would, I mean, that's like not a great capital in general because of all the floodplains. But when you're playing against Loveburger, this is a scary sight because he likes to go for early rushes, which is always food dependent. That's, you're thinking drafts and things like that. Um, and the oil means you're going, helicopters or whatever. So here I do an interesting move. I see him build the settler, and because I saw this worker last turn road and I saw this worker going for another road, I figured he was trying to get a city in that direction. And because of that, I blocked the cow tile so that he'd build this settler in the other direction, which he may have been doing anyway. That may have been his plan. But it, was to encourage that. And so now I say, okay, so I go wartime here. Um, if I know he's going to plant coastal, maybe he'll plant coastal next to the oil, and I can get a boat timing, try and snag that oil city for myself, and if that's his only oil and I hold it, then I can totally mess up his game, use that oil for myself, and, um, you know, essentially take him out of the game that way, and simultaneously make getting oil for myself easier. So that's kind of what was going through my head. In order to execute this, I go for a kind of crazy play. I buy the galleon here, um, and you'll see um, I make a galleon in Constantinople the turn after as well, because so I've identified Love as making workers. He has a ton of workers, and he's made a settler. He did not plant where I was hoping he would plant, but that still is a boatable spot. And so so I decided instead to or not instead, but I decided to go for this kind of crazy play where um, where I just spam out these galleons. As Byzantines, you get quite a bit of value because they're 5 moves instead of 4, um, but but you don't typically want to make a bunch of them because it's not like I'm about to make. So you can see I've made 2, and I'm gonna make another one. Um, you really, I'm only gonna send 2 units to Love, and so making 3 boats to send 2 units is kind of crazy. Um, but you'll see it actually works out well. Yeah, I won't spoil it maybe. Um, but yeah, essentially the way that the play works is um, it's a concept called boat chaining. If you're not familiar, but the idea is that you can set up boats in the water ahead of where you're going, so that you load units into the boat, you move the boat, and you move the units from one boat onto the other boat, and move that boat to the next boat, and so on and so forth. And so you can effectively move your units what would have been like 3 boats worth of moves in a single turn. So it's very useful in future, especially where the units are very expensive and the boat distances are often long, especially for wooden boats. And um, so this can cut down on travel time, um, and I can actually get my units there quickly, and build up something useful while I'm waiting for the drafts to come out, essentially. So that's me looking at the map and realizing we're in a bit of trouble this game. my position long term is pretty bad. Like, I don't have any good land to expand into. I've heavily invested into this play because I think if I don't, Loveburger's just gonna send bombers and junk at me. And of course, Bonehead to my north as well can boat me pretty much at any time. So you can see this is me boat chaining. And that effectively saved me 2 whole turns of boating. And um, so yeah, I pretty much figured we have to go all in on this play. I built a settler in Adrianople because um, where that city that Love planted um, is means that I can't actually get the oil from there, so I have to hook my own, which is maybe safer anyway, but because Love's team may have been able to pass some aluminum or something to make cruise missiles, um, but it does mean that I have to actually invest in the settler and things like that. So here I also essentially I'm finding value for the early investment. So I very early invested in um, these 3 boats, and now I have one of them that's about to land Love, another one that's about to go hook the oil, and the third one I'm sending to my teammate El Quixote, who's Portuguese in this game, which means that he can get his golden age by sinking that boat with his unique unit, the Karak. So, it's a 75 shield investment early on, which is a lot. But, keeping them active and having them have things to do is important. Um, so here I'm setting up the take. Theoretically, I could have landed last turn, but I would have had to have manually unloaded. He was only size 1 and not guaranteed to grow to size 2, which meant that if I take the city, I would not have captured it, so that would have been a problem. And I also would have been attacking over a river, which is also problematic. So I waited 1 turn to get the guaranteed hit. This was a 2-on-1, and actually, in that city, so talk about value, right? So I just said I spent 75 prod on this building play, 75 production. Inside that city was a bomber, a fighter, and a submarine. And the submarine was just built that turn. So if I was 1 turn slower, if I had 1 less boat in my boat chain, um, then that play doesn't go off, and I lose all my units, all my investment. He keeps his bomber and his fighter. So it was very fortunate, honestly, what ended up happening here. Um, so now you can see my capital's like fully improved. It's using all improved tiles and things like that. So um, we're kind of reached a good point. You can see it was very quick, but what I did there is I disbanded the 3rd boat in order to get production in the box in that city, so that I can build a flak, because I know that Love has oil, and so he probably is making more bombers, and so that means that like eventually he could just bomb that city out. But I could discourage that by putting a flak in there, and that would buy me time to get a helicopter in there and reinforce the city. And at this point, you can see he still hasn't like built an airport, and he's not coastal, so he can't be getting past aluminum or anything like that. So here I go for the Coliseum because I just recognize at this point I'm going to be drafting pretty much all game. Boogie dies, but it's unfortunate, but it was kind of expected. His position was really rough. I don't. You see more of it later on. Yeah, so right there, just a quick snapshot, but um, we'll see more of it later when we're fighting Halu. So right now, I'm just preparing essentially uh, my setup so that I can go back word time and um, make something, as far as offensive units. So there, I buy the harbor so that the oil will be hooked going home. Um, Loveburger pushes in here he bombs. I think he may have lost a bomber in that attempt. I'm not sure. But anyway, he hits the toe for enough that it's now on bottom, which means it would shoot defensive bombard if he attacked into me, which is excellent because that means it's pretty much a guaranteed free kill on the first unit that hits. And then he would need essentially a perfect roll to retake that city. Um, and so he ends up not rolling it wisely, wisely realizing the situation. And and so I go for walls here just to further discourage him from trying to attack into that. And uh, essentially with this play, I shut down Love's aggression for the rest of the game, the rest of the foreseeable game. Because he's now on one city. He lost his early investment into that second city. Um, he lost his early investment into the bomber, into the fighter, and into the sub. So tons of early production and probably gold. And so the early game threat that I was worried about has pretty much been neutralized. And at this point, I'm thinking about how I can um, transition into the rest of the map. So you can see me trying to look around, and it looks pretty rough. Like you can see both Halu and Kyle are very big. Um, what I'm trying to tell my teammates is that um, Kyle's a good player and very good at like modern, for example, but he has not played a lot of future, and so he's not used to the future style combat, and so they could exploit that if they hit him early enough. Like eventually, if he gets a bunch of rails and he gets a bunch of units, um, you know, he's good enough at the game that he's not going to just lose. So, um, but if they make it chaotic early enough, maybe there's a chance. So here I decide I'm going to set up a play on Bonehead, and the general idea of this play is get a foothold with this boat and then helicopter in reinforcements. The first set of units for the helicopter are going to go into Medina because I just need to make sure that Love doesn't take that back. I can't let him get that coastal because that just has too much threat on my oil. Um, so um, so that's where that goes. But then the um, I start stacking for um, Bonehead now, and it's kind of one of these funny plays. But the idea is I want to get as cheap a kill on Bonehead as possible. Um, so I want to essentially overwhelm him with my toe infantry on this first hit, and then fly in a bunch of toe infantry with helicopters and just swarm him. So don't give him time to respond. Don't give him time to build up. I want to just knock him out of the game with the 1-2 punch. Boat, helicopter. That's the plan. And the bonus, if I could do it, would be to get either a city or a worker, which is, I mean, you kind of need to make that work for a helicopter play anyway, because you need one of those two things to fly your helicopter into, either an airbase or a city. But then I want to take a worker from Bonehead's land and essentially sail it over the top of the island to where Boogie used to be and drop an airbase on Halu. That's essentially the long-term plan. Um, and that's me. You can see me kind of thinking about it now there. And because at this point, like I can see Halu and Kyle are pretty close to railroading. They are both in strong positions with a ton of res that's just like right next to their capitals essentially. And so if we're gonna win, we kind of have to knock them out of the game quickly. We can't beat them late game in this setup, and that's kind of why I was saying this is kind of a, what I would say is a dealt loss. Um, we are definitely at a disadvantage from a starting point perspective. But there's opportunity to come back and opportunities to make plays. So yeah. Um, so this is just essentially setting up for this play on Bonehead. And right here, that what I was doing down there is just trying to get a worker um, out of that city so that I can make a radar tower and protect myself. So yeah, this was a little risky. I could have landed on the tile north of New York, and that would have pretty much guaranteed that I get the city. Um, I mean, a really bad roll could have happened, but 4-on-1 is pretty good odds. But I did it this way and had to attack over a river, but got a really nice roll, so that was very fortunate. And then I got the worker I wanted, so that was pretty big. And now I have two helicopters in here, one to recon, and the other to drop the units on him. And that's the plan. The plan is that I am going to use one of these helicopters essentially to identify the weak spot, and then use the other one to insert myself into the weak spot and then kill in that way. So so far, so good. We got his rubber city. This was clearly one of his more invested in cities, so um, it's going pretty well. That toe that he has there on the road is kind of annoying because I was planning on walking the worker on that road into the boat and sailing that to Halu, um, but I couldn't do that, obviously, now that it's being blocked. But so looking here, it's not looking promising. Like it just like you see him draft right there, so we know he's got at least two toes in cap, probably more, and the odds that I get any sort of hit off on cap super unlikely. So I go for a choking play. Essentially, it's something similar to what I did to Love, where I say, okay, probably can't get the kill, but I can just neutralize whatever threat you have in this game by taking out your secondary coastals. I get the disorder on cap, and I get another kind of lucky roll, pretty lucky roll there, winning 4-2. I don't actually know the odds of that, but it feels like it should be pretty small. Um, because you probably get bombarded on the first two. Although if it's a clean win for him on the first roll, then I suppose he doesn't get bombarded. So this is where he does something foolish. He moves all of his toes out, and of course he can't draft because his city's on fire, and so leaving Naked King there um, means that I can just drop my helicopter right on him and get the kill I want to guarantee that he doesn't draft the next turn. Um, I target the cow here, and um, yeah, I mean I'm hitting over a river, but I'm hitting into the king, so the king is not a real defensive unit. So, um, I have been dropping kind of close to the end of turn, which is a little dangerous, uh, but I think it was actually good that I was doing that because later in the game I actually really needed to do that, and so getting that early practice was huge. So here now I got the kill, and the love threat looks like it's still neutralized. I need to get on Halu, and I have the worker, so um, I send the helicopters home to go pick up more units, but I decide that I have time now to go pick up the mausoleum, which is my Golden Age wonder. Some Civs in future can only get Golden Age off of wonders. Pretty much any Civ with an ancient era unique unit. And so, so the mausoleum is the one for the Byzantines, and which is actually, as far as wonders go, a nice one because it's cheap. It's um, it's only 100 prod, where most wonders are 200. So that's kind of nice. And then here I have I load up the boat to go to Halu, and I make this explorer, which is supposed to like, you know, scout for me essentially, see if it's a safe spot to land my units, scout for if I can drop helicopters on them, things like that. Uh, but you'll see that it doesn't turn out like I was hoping. So now though, we're just starting to prepare paratroopers and golden age paratroopers because um, you can see. Um, well, I guess you can't see now, but I do know already that Halu is railroading, and so bombers aren't going to do anything, and because I don't have nearly enough to break through railroads, and um, and I'm just kind of hoping that Halu is essentially asleep. He's, you know, um, decided he's in such a safe position that he doesn't need to build units or something like that. And so I can get away with some crazy attack. And at this point, honestly, like even after that kill and even after Love being totally neutralized, I'm thinking to myself, and I was in a voice call while live streaming this, and I was saying essentially, I'm gonna go for a crazy double helicopter drop play on Halley's capital, and if that fails, uh, it's probably over. We can probably resign because we just have absolutely no late game potential here. We don't have railroads. Um, I don't have aluminum. My team barely has mechs. Like I have mechs, and I'm not even sure if my teammates have hooked the mechs that they own. So, I mean, it's just a full disaster, really, if this goes late game. So, so I'm just thinking maybe Halu hasn't built units. I can drop off 2 helicopters on his capital, and if I take it, sell all the buildings. He probably cruises and retakes, but maybe we buy enough time that um, the guys in the south, with their golden ages, which they both have, um, can kind of come into the game and finish things off. Here, I definitely make a mistake, so I'm in Golden Age now, and my Golden Age wonder was Mausoleum, so I am like swimming in happiness. And as you can see, I'm only making 8 gold per turn right now, but I think I can be making up to 50 or 60 gold per turn. And if I recognize this, um, I think the kill is um, much more likely. First of all, I could be spending that on paratroopers and things like that, but you'll see later on in the game, there's a great opportunity to spend gold if I had it, and I don't because I forget to switch my luxury slider back down. So yeah, little sad, but um, anyway. So here we're scouting. Here's the um, oh no, I guess it's next turn. Um, Disaster will strike, but it's fine. So, right, so now we have our barracks and capital. We are making paratrooper every 2 turns. We can probably get to paratrooper every turn, but it would require mines on both of the mountains, and I would probably have to merge some citizens. I think I calced it out, and if I had a mine on both mountains and a hill, then I would need um, then I would need one more grassland mine and forward population, so like size 12, and I would get paratrooper per turn, which is, I mean, at this point that's far off, and that's kind of a problem because I need to be hitting right now. So it just it kind of goes in line with that whole we need to kill now or we're in a lot of trouble. So move in the helicopters here, and that's the disaster. That stupid horseman, which was not there the turn before, spawned that last turn, and then kills my explorer, which is supposed to end of turn run into Halu's land and show me where it's safe to land. So that was horrible. But yeah, so now I'm just gonna have to drop blind essentially, and just looking at it, essentially, I decided, yeah, that tile that I pointed at, probably unlikely to be covered. Like no worker should be there, um, and it would be kind of weird to just have a unit sitting there. So, so you can see I type in there even low percentage chance of working, just because it's like, I'm flying into his cap. He's drafting out of multiple cities. He has railroads, so like even if he had no units, if he's fast enough, he lives this anyway. But he probably has something. So it turned out. So here we go. You can see I do it. Like I do the landing. Ready? Like now, you can see I do it, but only one of them actually lands, which would have been a disaster. Except two things happen right there. One is that horseman would have taken my airbase if I actually landed both of them. The second is Halu just made the Manhattan Project, which was easily the biggest mistake of this game. Because if you look right now at the position, they have a surplus of resources, they have railroads, they have the late game position. If they just keep building cities and they keep building up their army, like if they let their core cities build army, their fringe cities build settlers, they can just blob their way into an unlosable position. And I mean like completely unlosable. Like this game, there were parts of this game that felt unwinnable for us. Like it was a position that they should not be able to lose. But like there's a world where they actually got themselves into an unlosable spot, and instead they went for this Manhattan Project play. And since I killed Bonehead, I got two sources of uranium right next to me, and now I have a play into them. I can, a stray nuke, and we can win. So I tried this crazy landing, and it actually worked somehow. It still baffles me that there was not a worker on that tile, um, despite it not being railed yet. Um, so I try to take this northern city. I get a really lucky roll, but I do not end up getting it. Um, but I cause a lot of havoc. I take a bunch of workers, build an airbase, build a radar tower, generally just, cause chaos, which, if you're going Manhattan Project, is not what you want, because you do not want to have to split attention between doing Manhattan Project, essentially building nukes and building units to defend yourself. Like this is a disaster right now for Halu. All right, so this is where I just identified that uranium there. If I can get this city to not be disordering, that worker that's next to the sugar, I can capture that right now. And if I had like 500 gold, I could just buy a nuke in that city, and it's in range of Halu's capital. I could literally have just nuked Halu's capital like right now if I had recognized earlier. Like even at this point, I haven't fixed my gold. It's crazy. Um, so yeah. Anyway, it was really a huge blunder on my part. Um, but we did. I mean, yeah, that easily could have ended the game. But realistically, also, there's no reason that Hatton should even be happening. Like I still don't understand why they went for that play. I guess they just got impatient or something. Um, but yeah, so now in Constantinople, I'm building the nuke because I just planted the uranium. Um, so, and then in Nicaea, I'm going to build the nuke sub. And so now I have, some sort of long odds shot at actually killing someone with this nuke play, which, you know, I should not have any business being anywhere near a kill from here, um, but I am now. So it kind of looked like I was cutting off his res, but it turned out I was not he because he built an airport in Rome, and so his um his res was still getting back to his cap, so he could still build nukes and stuff like that, um, which was unfortunate, but that's how it is. I was kind of thinking at this point, how can I cut off that uranium supply? Because if they just can't build nukes, then we're great. If we can build nukes and they can't build nukes, and they spent 350 prod for the right to build nukes, then you know that's great for us. So so now I'm thinking, I'm not built at all. I'm probably like fifth MFG at this point, and so it would be better to pass uranium to someone who can use it a little bit better than I can, and as well, I already have my nuke pre-build set up, so yeah. So here, I don't remember what actually happens. Oh yeah, that's right. He nukes me. He wins the 1v1, which is kind of crazy. Um, and then yeah, but you can kind of see even still. So I lost a lot of units there, but he had to spend an entire nuke, and I still have 2 air bases on him, and I'm building my own nukes at this point. So he even now is not out of the woods yet. It's still tricky for him. So um, so I'm essentially now just setting up the nuke play because at this point I'm thinking to myself that's about all I have going for me is a stray nuke lands on Halu and maybe we win, um, and and maybe blob up there a little bit, see if I can get something started because they don't seem to keep expanding, and if this goes really late, then having more cities up there could be nice. Um, but overall, I'm thinking to myself, we're still kind of on the timer. They have rails, we don't, um, and we're just kind of have to hope that we can get a knockout punch soon. Here I'm just trying to set up hooking the second uranium to the south. I was a little slow with that. Probably should have been able to do that quicker, but it was fine. Here, I recognize that city that I just highlighted um, probably is weak. It's probably, I mean, it's a backline city. It's, near his neighbor that um, theoretically it should be protecting him and stuff like that. So I was thinking that mech has a chance to just swoop in and, get some value. And especially because you can see there, he colonied the aluminum, that there's, you know, at least I would be cutting that off. And if I could get a helicopter in, maybe I cause some more havoc, just essentially give room for my team to do something. And again, here I'm just trying to cut the uranium, prevent them from uh, using their resources. And you can see Yama pushing into Coventry, big moves by him. So here I move the mech, take the cruise, check there. That turns out that's the king. Kill, and that's Kyle gone. In the blink of an eye, his whole nation crumbles because one mech sneaks in behind him, steals a missile, and kills his king. And now I have this nuke in the water, which was supposed to go to Kyle, but now I'm thinking I can just send that along the railroad to Halu. He ends up GGing, but the plan was just to send that nuke to Halu along these railroads. I'll just rewind a little. This whole railroad network here is already set up for Kyle, and so I could just like ship in this nuke, and now I have this permanent air base essentially to fly in more helicopters, and I could just nuke Halu's cap and you know essentially ruin him that way. So yeah, overall, it was a great game, super fun to play, tons of action right from the get go. Um, but there were many places where the enemy really gave it away. Building Manhattan Project, easily the biggest throw of this game, because that just left them so vulnerable units wise, and it also gave us an opening to actually attack with. Like it gave us kill threat that we really shouldn't have had access to. Um, but despite that, I mean, we played, or I don't really know what Yama and Uck were doing most of the game, but they seemed like they were pretty well built, and we played opportunistically, taking what they gave us, and shutting down Love's early plays, killing Bonehead, getting the airbase on Halu, all those things, setting up eventually ways for them to make mistakes into giving us the win. So, one way to look at this game is how to throw a future 101, but the other way is um, how to make plays that can set you up to win. And of course, it's not like you're guaranteed to win if you make the right plays. You can make all the right plays and still lose. But that's the nature of any game with randomness. Um, but you don't get 90% win rates or whatever by not making the right plays. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I'm thinking if more fun games happen or something, I might try this format again, or I might try a more condensed format where I might highlight multiple games at once and just go to like key turns or key attacks, things like that, where stuff boiled over, give some context, and then show the final fireworks and battle and stuff like that. You can let me know what you'd prefer, but yeah, with that, thanks for watching and catch you next time.